Let's have a look at the Sunday papers and news websites. Reviewing for us this week, Stuart Hughes from BBC World News and writer-director working in film, Catherine Linstrum. I'm going to begin with you, Catherine, because Alex there mentioned problems of litter that she was dealing with as an MP, and that's one of the stories that you've picked up on.
It is, yes. In fact, the litter is all over the news at the moment. It's something which is very close to my heart. I'm one of those people who gets enraged at the sight of litter, and I do a lot of litter picking where we live. Yes, this is over the whole country. I mean, obviously, nationally, there was an outcry at what was happening in Bournemouth. But here in Wales, Cardiff Bay has been inundated with people, mainly young people, I think, doing a lot of drinking and taking drugs. And it's not the drinking and the drugs that's the problem. It's what they leave behind. I mean, the images here on Wales Online are pretty horrible. It's a big problem. It's a big problem in this country.
It's hard, though, isn't it? You know, because young people are young people. You know, they want to go out and have a big time. I don't know. Should we be putting skips in these places or something to try and deal with this problem?
I think it's a lot to do with education. I think if you look at primary schools, the children there, they don't drop their rubbish, and then they get to high school and then suddenly they start throwing it everywhere. I think it's probably like most social situations. You need a bit of carrot and a bit of stick, and it's a big shift. But I think it has to happen because it's just getting crazy now.
Stuart, what do you see?
Well, as Bill Powell mentioned on the programme a little earlier, readers of the Mail on Sunday will be confronted this morning with the sight of the Prime Minister doing press-ups on the front page. And the reason for these physical jerks is to prove to the Mail's political editor that Boris Johnson is, in his own words, fit as a butcher's dog after bouncing back from coronavirus. And the main reason for the interview that the PM has given to the Mail on Sunday is to set out his plans for the post-lockdown economic recovery. But it seems that a secondary purpose for the interview is to send a signal about his own physical recovery as well. The Mail says whispers about the Prime Minister's health have been circulating since he returned to Downing Street following his dramatic fight for life in intensive care. The PM, though, insists the rumours are nonsense. The country is going to bounce forward, and I certainly feel full of beans, he says. But when asked whether he helps his fiancée with nappy changes and night feeds for their 2-month-old son, Wilfred, he chooses his words rather carefully. He says, I am both present and involved in a detailed way. I think we can take that as Boris speak for no.
Catherine.
Yes, well, full of beans. We're using that kind of language. I think we can move on to pantomime. A piece here, it's from the Guardian Observer about the dire state of theatres at the moment with the COVID crisis, and the headline, obviously, the show must go on. What other headline could they possibly have? But the threat to the panto season leaves theatres fearing loss of golden goose. I think it's good to remember that theatre in this country isn't just about Chekhov and Shakespeare and people dressed in black and talking about death. It's also big shows, big feel-good shows that people flock to, and it's a very important part of our life. I mean, the creative industries in this country contribute a huge amount to the economy. It's something like £13 million every hour. So, and theatres are really struggling. So now theatres have been told that they can open, but no live performances can take place, which is a bit like my grandfather used to have this thing. He used to say we could have ham and eggs if we had any ham, but we've no eggs.
Yeah, okay.
And it's like, what are they going to do? It's already a very precarious industry.
It's fascinating that I was reading this article, and some theatres make a quarter of their income comes from the Christmas panto. That's extraordinary, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. I mean, I think it's economies of scale, and those big venues, also the big venues, they need to have a full house in order to make it economically viable. So obviously you can't have a full house if you're socially distancing, and pantomimes require audience interaction. You know, the dame goes wandering through the theatre and picks on
shouting
children.
Out and all, yeah.
All that just can't possibly happen. And I think it's the uncertainty that's just killing them. as I say, in an already uncertain and precarious business.
Stuart, what else have you seen?
Well, he may not be a household name in most households, but Sir Mark Sedwill is a key figure at the heart of the Whitehall bureaucratic machine, but he may not be for much longer, according to the Sunday Telegraph, which says the UK's most senior civil servant is set to announce his departure as early as next week. Sir Mark's job he has two jobs actually, the National Security Advisor and Cabinet Secretary. But according to the Telegraph, he's about to become a victim of the Prime Minister's planned overhaul of the way that government operates as the UK emerges from the pandemic. On Tuesday, Boris Johnson's going to fast-track the building of new schools and hospitals. The project's been dubbed Project Speed, taking its inspiration from the way those Nightingale hospitals were built in record time. So the Whitehall machinery is going to be working overtime in the months ahead to deliver these big projects, but it seems that Downing Street's decided that Sir Mark Sedwill's not the man who should be overseeing them. The Sunday Telegraph says that Dominic Cummings, that number 10 advisor and occasional visitor to Durham, told of a meeting of aides last week that a hard rain is going to fall as a result of what he perceives as Whitehall failures in responding to coronavirus. And according to the Sunday Telegraph, that rain is going to fall hardest of all on Sir Mark Sedwill.
Catherine, what's your next story?
Well, I've got a little one which is, I just did The Show Must Go On, and there's a show which still goes on in the Daily Mail, which is the Meghan versus Kate show. I see that one is still running, so we won't go into any detail there, but it's the same story. People love that story. Meghan's a power-grabbing I don't know what, and Kate's out laughing and planting things in the garden. So we'll move on swiftly from that one. There's another one in the Mirror, which is all about how to dye your clothes pink with avocado stones. I don't know if we want to get into that either. I mean, I looked at the picture of what colour it came out, and I thought it really did look like when you've put your socks in the wash. And it was, if you have a bit of time on your hands, you might want to dye some of your clothes pink using avocado stones. So that's a message to people out there who feel they've got too much time on their hands.
Does anyone have too much time in their hands these days? Stuart?
Well, a huge lorry with a crane appeared at the top of my street this week, and emerging from the back of it was a huge hot tub for one of my neighbours. And according to the Sunday Times, my neighbours are bang on trend, because just a tiny inflatable paddling pool in your back garden is no longer enough. It's hot tubs that are the must-have item for summer 2020, according to the Sunday Times. And depending on your budget, you can drop 16 grand on a hot tub which seats 8 people and has built-in Wi-Fi. Or if your finances are a bit tighter like mine are, you can go to Lidl and buy a hot tub for £299. Or you could, but they proved so popular that they sold out immediately and you can't get hold of one. And I think it's really fascinating to see how our lives are changing for the long term, perhaps, as the result of coronavirus. The world of work is changing, and the way we spend our free time is going to change too, because if we're spending more time at home, we can't go on foreign holidays, and we're concerned about congregating in large numbers in restaurants and pubs, then why not invite your friends over and have a drink and a dip in the hot tub instead? Sounds delightful.
And then dye your clothes pink with an avocado. Catherine, we have time for probably one more story.
Well, yes, and I suppose speaking of spending money on useless things, I've got a piece here, again from the Guardian, about spending £500 million, the government spending £500 million on the wrong satellites, the headline being, we bought the wrong satellites. So it's investing in a company that makes satellites. It's to replace the Galileo navigation system. It's all stuff that goes beyond me.
We helped pay for anyway, but now can't use because we're leaving the EU, so as people understand. This is the GPS system.
Correct. So the new satellites apparently function at a much lower height than the ones that we actually need. And so the government's hoping that some scientists are going to find a way of overcoming that. But they have already spent the $500 million on it, which seems a little bit hasty.
Thank you both very much indeed. There's more politics today with the Sunday Politics on BBC One Wales this morning. After the news is All Things Considered. Bore da chi.